These are interesting because since there's no bruising or bleeding or broken bones that people can point to, most people think that after the initial incident, it's all over. But the more subtle impact, the more subtle injuries come out later on in different ways, often in boundary issues and in trust issues. Boundary issues are pretty obvious. Say you're sitting next to somebody on a plane, that's the usual one, and you start telling them your life, and usually that's okay. But if if you meet somebody at a bar and you start telling them your life, and then suddenly you're going out with them, that can lead, if it's the wrong person, it can lead to a problem. If the person who is spilling their stuff prematurely is doing it with a potential abuser, if it's an offender of some kind, a predator is the word I often use. The predator is picking up with, oh, you're sharing this stuff way too quickly. You're going to be easy prey. I'm going to be able to control you. That's what they're thinking. So that's a problem. That's a less obvious consequence of something that happens earlier in life. And then people stop and say, what went wrong? How did this happen to me? Another one is trust issues. Boundary issues and trust issues share some things in common. Trust issues, usually we say that you shut down, you don't trust anybody for anything. It can also go the other way, that you trust everybody way too soon. And certainly those are boundaries. And that's a consequence of injury that happens earlier on. Another less obvious consequence of emotional abuse, or of any abuse, is lack of emotion, because it's beaten out of us. Lack of emotion. And psychologists will say that the person that their patient has a flat affect, or they're flat. I'm talking about their emotional expression. Okay. And they've gone to flat because anything other than that leaves them too vulnerable.
It's a survivor mode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes.
Because the perpetrator pretty much knows what every little twitch in their eye or facial feature means.
Sure. So they go.
They can work on that.
So they take it all down. They take it all to. And there's let me just run through them. There's hypersensitivity, and that's a sign of being hurt. It is a sign of having been abused or having witnessed abuse before. Blame, shame, and guilt. Free-floating anxiety and fear. Generalized rage. They go off at anything.
Oh, okay.
Disproportionate emotional reactions. Responsibility issues. Either you take no responsibility or you take too much responsibility. That often happens in situations where commonly in adult children of alcoholics. Children of alcoholics grow up having to take responsibility because the parent is absent and they run the family. So that's one of them. Lack of initiative or ambition. Trouble with decision making. Trouble finishing things. Trouble starting things, actually, and then trouble finishing things. Substance abuse of all kinds. And all kinds of other isms. Eating disorders of all kinds, physical symptoms, feeling, what do they call it, psychosomatic presentations. Mm-hmm. A lack of energy, a lack of balance of all kinds, a lack of connection with other people and with self. Disassociation, that's, if anybody remembers the movie Sybil.
Sybil.
Breaking off pieces of the psyche, break off to protect the victim, self-harm of all kinds. Loss of feeling of entitlement, which is a big one. I'm just rushing past it, but that's a huge one. Post-traumatic stress disorder, flashbacks and nightmares, sensory triggers, loud noises is a common one.
Oh, we could talk a whole show on just on one of these.
Just on one of them, and finally changes in intimacy and sexuality.
Those are
obviously common ones. Yeah.
Are the consequences of emotional abuse temporary or they're long term? I mean, you just listed a whole lot there.
Yeah. Well, they are long term unless there's intervention. They need a practitioner who knows what she or he is seeing and how to intervene. And unfortunately, I don't see that happening often enough. It can be repaired. It needs someone who understands it. It needs full focus on. It needs a full focus and intent. The focus on positive is great, but if you ignore the negative, it's not going to fix anything. And we have to get in and take out what isn't working or address what isn't working. And there's lots of ways to do that. Support groups are one way. Working at it with various therapeutic modalities like art therapy or music therapy. I was in and also trained in dance therapy and movement therapy are helpful, and there are lots of other methods as well. So it gets you out of the thinking brain into your emotional brain, and the two of them working together can be very therapeutic and over time. You know, it's seldom something like that. It happens in a moment. But eventually, you know, if you focus on it and you're with people who know what they're doing, you will move from one place to another. And also, it certainly depends on the depth and breadth of the injury.
Right. But, it doesn't have to be physical.
Oh, no.
I mean, even if it was physical, it's still it's emotional. Just being hit.
Even if it's physical, the way I understand and the way I conceptualize this is physical abuse is the tip of a very deep iceberg. So what you don't see is enormous. Physical abuse is terrible, but it's the little tip of the iceberg that you can see. Icebergs are enormous under the water. It takes focus and a gentle hand and a focused intent to keep at it and get to what's wrong and, as I said before, reprogram.
All right, thank you very much, Ilene. That was Ilene Wolf from Healing
Emotionally Abused Lives.
Thank you, Ilene.